President van Staal, distinguished delegates, it is always a pleasure to come here. I'm always looking forward to come here to discuss with you and get your questions. And I will also this time try to answer as much as I can. I understand that in a moment when you are in a celebratory mood, the ratification by San Marino of the European Charter of Local Self-Government means that 100% of the Council of Europe territory is now covered by the provisions of the Charter. So we now have a truly pan-European coverage and one single legal space for the local self-government in Europe, and I congratulate you on this achievement. It is now important to ensure full and coherent implementation of these standards. A common legal space also means consistency in the application of standards and achieving Charter's implementation without reservations. A 100% Charter, as you say in the Congress, is an ambitious endeavour. What we notice today is that the Council of Europe, our benchmark and our assistance are more than ever needed. But the resources are scarcer than before, and this affects the way we work. Let me briefly update you on where we are at this particular moment in time in the organisation in general. When I took up my office as the Secretary General just over 4 years ago, I encountered several challenges. One of it was to update the legal arsenal of the Council of Europe, namely our conventions, which allow us to combine robust law enforcement responses to cross-border threats with clear human rights safeguards. We have added 2 new protocols to the European Convention on Human Rights aimed at improving the efficiency of the court, new conventions, but also prioritise the list of treaties, allowing us to focus on the most important ones. My priority was to look at the functioning of the monitoring mechanism. That was the second thing, which we very early started to look into. These mechanisms, like the Charter of the Local Self-Government, are the key assets of our organisation. I felt that we have not been able to exploit to full potential of the monitoring because of the insufficient coordination and sporadic follow-up to their findings. All in all, in addition to the Congress, but also the Parliamentary Assembly, the Council of Europe counts over 10 evaluation and monitoring mechanisms, conducting visits and producing regular monitoring reports. Without coordination, there was a risk of overlap and duplication, but also of what is called monitoring fatigue in our member states. In order to remedy this, we have put in place a number of measures to help reduce the burden of the member states. The other, much more difficult challenge is to improve the follow-up of monitoring we are doing. The monitoring recommendations are useful only if followed through and implemented by the member states in cooperation with us. This is perhaps one of the most important parts of the reforms, but also the most demanding, requiring a change of attitude and culture of doing things differently, but also a decentralisation of resources in the field. The work of better connecting our monitoring mechanisms with our work in the field is one of the fundamental importance and is still not finished. The objective is not to shame and blame any country for the shortcomings, but to establish a constructive dialogue with the authorities on the basis of the findings of the monitoring bodies. And last May, the ministerial meeting asked me to present a yearly report on human rights, democracy and the rule of law in Europe based on the findings of the monitoring mechanisms, accompanied by proposals for action. The first step in preparation of such a report has just been completed for the 47 member states of the Council of Europe. Based on the data from our monitoring instruments, we have a country-by-country analysis identifying 3 key challenges per country. Individual country profiles are now sent to each of the member states and should serve as the guiding lines of our future cooperation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, reforms that you have undertaken here in the Congress have already largely echoed the general reform efforts, and I'm very glad to see these results today. I appreciate in particular the steps taken by the Congress to broaden political dialogue with member states at national, local and regional levels. In this regard, I welcome your decision to develop post-monitoring dialogue in order to work on the issues raised in your recommendations and to help the authorities with their implementation. So I believe you are going exactly in the right direction. At the same time, I would like to see a further increase of the cooperation programs of the Congress, but also their better integration with the different actors within the Council of Europe, such as a stronger involvement of the Congress in the country-specific action plans that we are now having. It is also my strong belief that we have an important role to play in countering a number of rather worrying trends which we observe in Europe today, such as the rise in extremism, hate speech, and the many attacks we are witnessing on minorities. You will not have failed to notice the importance which I put on the need to address the situation for the Roma people in Europe. The dull statistics show that despite countless programs, budgets and activities on the NGOs, Europe is failing in its integration of Roma. We are failing in making the largest European minority a full-fledged member of our societies. And this worries me a lot. And old habits die hard, as you know. We saw last week how all these structured and carefully crafted efforts on combating anti-Gypsyism seem to be easily wiped out by a story around medieval stereotypes of child stealing. A catchy media story with abusive generalizations and risk being taken a step back. During my last address to you in spring, I mentioned the high hopes that I had from the European Alliance of Cities and Regions for Roma inclusion, launched by the Congress. This is an opportunity not to be missed. I am glad to see that the program is now being rolled out together with the local authorities. I know that many municipalities are committed to do their utmost in their struggle for integration, but feel alone and poorly equipped. They need your support, expertise and resources, and I know that you will give them exactly that. We must help them to get the resources, offer all the backing they need, and mobilize others to follow suit. This is, in fact, this has been the underlying general objective of the reforms which I launched in the Council of Europe. I am glad to see that it is producing concrete and measurable results. I could also perhaps mention your cooperation with both the intergovernmental sector and the Parliamentary Assembly in the 1 in 5 campaign, which has been recently boosted with the launch of your own campaign to promote the Pact of Towns and Regions to stop sexual violence against children. So the Congress action today is more in sync with that of the whole organization, addressing common political priorities, such as your cooperation on the reform process in Morocco and Tunisia, and elaborating a partner for local democracy status to be granted to those countries' delegations or the activities in Belarus. There is a great potential for synergies there, and I welcome your initiative to organize a seminar of the European Charter of Self-Government in Minsk. I believe that the Congress members can and should act as messengers and goodwill ambassadors for local self-government through their involvement in activities in Belarus. So, ladies and gentlemen, your alignment to the common priorities is also reflected in the debates during this session. I welcome the fact that you chose to discuss political extremism at local and regional level. It is a particularly timely discussion. Extremism and hate speech must be countered at all levels of government and with all sectors of society. This, and there are many other examples, which I always use to say that, and reminding us that people in Europe, they live in local communities, they live in nation states, and they live on the continent of Europe. So, Council of Europe always need to have attention to all these levels of governance. And that is why I pay so particularly strong attention to the work of the Congress, because local governments, local communities play such an important role in the democracy that we have established here in Europe. And that's why I'm so much appreciative for the fact, which I have talked about here today, how you in the Congress have aligned yourself with the general priorities of the organization as a whole. And I would like to pay tribute to the Secretary General of the Congress, and also, of course, to the President and to you as delegates here in the Congress. You will always have my support for your activities. Actually, I started my political career, if you can call it a career, at the local level, and I worked at the national level, and I'm very glad to serve here in Europe. All this comes together, I think, in the Council of Europe, and now I'm looking forward to your questions. And you may put any question you would like to, or that you have. Thank you.